Nobody knows about it. The single biggest barrier we have is lack of awareness. And what I find is when people discover it and they discover, what we do, how we work, then they become very, very passionate. They reach for the first thing and what they're told is you need a diagnosis, get a diagnosis, get a diagnosis, as though that is an end in itself. Go to your doctor or privately and get stimulant medication, and there is not any other discussion about any other option. And people are desperate and they're wanting to do the right thing, for themselves, for their lives, for their children, to keep them in that school and help them keep up with their colleagues because they know they're smart, they just know there's something else going on. And the choices aren't there and people aren't made aware of them. I think there are two things. I think people are making an inordinate amount of money out of stimulant medications and, by the way, psychiatric medications. And I'm not saying they're not necessary in certain situations, they are. But actually I was reading at the weekend a great description of them that said they're a bit like chemotherapy drugs. They're sort of broad spectrum, they kind of slap things around a little bit. No one's fully identified how or why they operate in the way that they do, and they're not specific and they're not targeted.
I was diagnosed with ADHD 7 or 8 years ago, at the age of 52, which did come as a shock to me because up until that point I thought I was normal. My school reports are hilarious because they basically said could do much better if only he focused. We've tried the carrot, now the stick is going to, all that sort of stuff. It should have said has got ADHD written at the top of it.
But they didn't even know in those days, did they?
No, this is in the late 70s, early 80s.
Didn't have a clue. And that's many, many, many children. They're being fed this lovely education, but it's just all, because they're undiagnosed.
Exactly. Yeah. This lovely psychiatrist said, yes, you've got ADHD. And then the next question immediately was, do you want to go on to the meds?
Of course it was.
Of
course it was.
And because I'm clueless, I don't know, I'm not a scientist, I didn't know what was going on. Of course I wanted, there's so many things that are broken, including my marriage.
Of course.
And so yes, of course I want to try these meds.
Everyone does.
See if this is the elixir and the answer to everything. So I said yes. And then I was on them for 7 years. So, it seems staggering to me that there is this disorder called ADHD, the list of which, to describe it,
disorder, but anyway,
is a list of symptoms, not a list of root causes, but a list of symptoms.
Yes.
So distractibility, lack of focus, poor concentration, impulsivity, rejection sensitivities, for all these things are symptoms of this disorder, that they like to call it. But that industry and the stimulant medication industry have nobody seems to go, well, hold on, why? That's why.
That's the bit that killed me, okay? And that was really what got me involved in all of this work. And by the way, it's not just ADHD. It's across a whole raft of different things. If you've got someone with high anxiety, if you've got someone with dyslexia, if you've got someone with dyspraxia, if you've got someone with depression, with OCD, that really important step is saying, well, why? Why is that symptom there in the first place? Seem to be missing. And the other thing is, just in general with, psychiatric diagnoses and diagnoses of neurodiversity, most of them, in fact, all of them are based on a description of a cluster of symptoms, as you said. Now, that's not to undermine them and say they're not real conditions, because they are real conditions, but you're not taking a blood marker, you're not doing any kind of objective biological test. And my argument is symptoms can change, right? And they, as you've witnessed, they change. We can help symptoms change. So if you change the symptoms, are you changing the diagnosis? It's an area people aren't really talking about.
No, exactly.
But I know you can improve symptoms, and you can do it across a whole raft of, whether it's mental health conditions, learning behaviour, and you can do it. It is possible to do it without medication for a lot of people. So,
I'd go further than that and say that this, my experience of life at the moment, since January, when I started to pop the zinc pills.
And not just zinc, by the way. We should say that to people, just in case they think it's that simple.
My audience know, because I've been quite open and honest about exactly what, in fact, I think I put
it's a little more complex, but anyway,
I put the list out there. But it's, since I started on the huge list of supplements that Lily put me on, would I go as far as to say that I feel, bearing in mind I've been ADHD all my life, we'll come on to that in a second, but I feel neurotypical.
Ah, okay.
I feel all of those symptoms on that list that describe ADHD, for me, have now gone.
You're now in control of them. Yeah.
And that's the bit that makes me angry, because why was I not told about this before?
Yeah.
But also makes me incredibly hopeful for the future, because I'm not going to lose my second marriage, because thankfully the RSD has literally disappeared.
Yeah.
And I
That's
never
wonderful.
thought that would happen.
That is wonderful.
And that moment when you go to your head hits the pillow at the end of the night and your brain starts whirring, and it goes over all the conversations from today. It goes over all those little moments that that made me trigger a little bit, because I thought, what do they mean by it? Honestly, probably because I've got so much magnesium in my system now.
You're so calm.
I'm literally, and what's the other one?
L-theanine.
Right,
Yeah,
L-theanine. Because as soon as Lily put that in, everything just calmed down.
Yeah.
Everything's smoothed out, the edges smoothed off, everything. My head hits the pillow now, I'm asleep within 5-10 minutes.
It's just fantastic, isn't it? And I think the two differences, number one, we're not guessing. We don't guess at anything. We test. So we find out exactly what's going on, where the imbalances are, which sounds like such an obvious thing to say. That's not how it happens with heavy-duty psychiatric meds, right? They have large-scale research studies, but ultimately, it's trial and error. They're going to try you on something, and if it doesn't work, do we reduce it? Do we double the dose? Do we try something else? I don't know. I haven't got any objective blood markers or urine tests to get, but we are actually testing. And I think the other thing is, and it's weird because I did study psychology, but the truth is I'm more passionate about biology than anything. That was biology, evolution. That was always my sort of obsession area. And if you look at all the work that we're doing at the clinic, we're treating the body actually. We're creating the perfect environment in the body for the brain to be able to flourish. Yeah. And it's so weird to me that traditionally we talk about the brain as though it exists in complete isolation of the body, like it's pickled in a glass jar sitting on a shelf somewhere. And yet most of our neurotransmitters are manufactured in our gut. If you haven't got the right nutrients for that, of course you're not going to have enough dopamine. Of course you're going to have too much adrenaline. Of course everything's going to be out of kilter. So you've got an option. You can put a fake chemical into the brain, right, to try and dampen that all down. Or you can swim upstream from the problem and say, well, why? Why can't I produce enough dopamine? What's happened to my melatonin pathway? What is going on with my adrenaline, my noradrenaline? And then you can give the body what it needs to recalibrate itself. So it takes a little longer. Yeah. But to me, it's literally having the levers for your own mental health, behaviour, everything for the future. But, it takes time and it costs money to do those lab tests. I mean, we're eternally negotiating with the labs, trying to get them to bring the prices down. That's all through them. That's all done through them. But we do negotiate, and we have got groups of tests together that we can do, or they can do more cheaply for our clients. But it's worth the investment, because it's your marriage, it's your life, it's your happiness. And the programs themselves, as I said, we try to make this as affordable as we possibly can for people. That's why I don't have lots of clinic spaces anymore. We've just tried to make it all as within reach for people, because, I feel very passionately about it.
It's I mean, in all honesty, being very candid, it's probably cost me on average about $250 a month so far.
Right.
So this last month was more expensive because Lily hit me with a whole list of supplements that obviously then I had to buy.
And we don't make any money on any of them. We negotiate.
So it's like, bang, okay, there we go. But you compare that to the cost that, I was probably paying 120, 130 quid a month just for meds.
Right. This would save a fortune actually for the NHS, for everyone, if they actually bothered swapping over to this different method. And the other thing is, you don't need to stay on those high doses. So what we do, just for people that don't know, so we find out where the imbalances are, and we come up with a completely customized, bio-individual protocol for what your body needs. And what your body needs, this is why I'm saying we've got to be careful. It's going to be different than what other people listening to this, what their bodies are going to need. And at the beginning, you need quite high doses to get things back to normal. But you have to be a little careful as you go as well, because I think you experienced a bit of that. Copper flushing, copper dump. If you have too much zinc, all that copper can come into your system, and copper pushes dopamine over into noradrenaline. So you've got to be very careful with that. But after you've normalised things, you can then go down to a sort of maintenance dose. You know, and one thing to be aware of with zinc is, and we always say this to parents especially, children very often, if we give them zinc, and it's not just zinc, I don't want everyone to think this is all about, it's not all about zinc, but it is an important nutrient, but it's not all about that. If we give it to children who really need it, who are ADHD, very often the first thing they'll do is they'll go through a big growth spurt, and their body will kind of slurp it up, because the reason they weren't growing is they didn't have enough. And then after that, you'll start seeing the behavioural change and improvement. But equally, if you're ill, for example, if you had a horrible cold or flu, you're going to need more zinc than you normally would, because you're going to need it for your immune system as well. Yeah. So, but you'll get to understand that yourself, and you can do it. And no, I don't get rich doing it. I'm just trying to give people the keys to help them.
Is there
an
element of zinc that also turns your beard back to full proper colour and starts growing your hair?
I can't answer that one.
I asked AI that question. It said yes, possibly.
I'm going to ask the biomed team that question. I don't know the answer to that.
So mine was my plasma zinc, and it's important this because a lot of people have already asked me the question. Oh, I'll go and get a zinc test, and I keep on saying no, it's plasma. You've got to have that particular test centrifuged so that they separate the plasma, and it's the zinc in the plasma that is.
You've got to be so careful with this, because it's so easy for it to go wrong. Even if it's put in the wrong test tubes and things, it can impact it. So we work with very specific labs, and we often will even send things off to the States, you know, for them to be tested in a kind of Walsh-approved laboratory, so that we know the results that we get are going to be accurate, that come back. But it can go wrong otherwise.
And the GPs, I don't even know the answer to this question, but the GPs don't offer this as a sort of plasma zinc test as standard. They wouldn't do it because it's so specialised.
We've asked, you know. And I think the thing as well is, so for people that aren't familiar with William Walsh and his work, I don't know how much you've talked,
No, I haven't. No, please explain.
So just as a background, and by the way, that isn't all the work we do, but this is a really important part, especially for ADHD. So William Walsh, I think he's 91 now, and he's a biochemist, and he's
still working.
I mean, he's unbelievable. He's like a walking ad. If you met him, he is so mentally on it. He makes me look like a slow boat to China. Honestly, he's extraordinary. He's totally on it, and he spent the last 45 years of his life, 50 years of his life, working to identify, to look at differences in biochemistry in people who have behavioural issues, ADHD, mental health conditions, compared to those that don't. So his first 10 years was working with violent young offenders in prison, and it was trying to figure out, you know, what's different in their biochemistry, and is there something that can we predict who's more likely to have those violent outbursts. And actually, it was really interesting. Guess what? Copper, zinc. His work found that there seemed to be, out of all the thousands of biochemical things that take place in the brain, six main areas of imbalance that are the culprits time and time and time again, with different types of mental health problems, behavioural problems. So he developed this work, and then also something called nutrient therapy. So it's saying, you know, we'll find out what the imbalance is, and then we'll use way above the RDA, by the way. So above the record, you know, it's not just pop a multivit and it'll all be sorted. Because if you've got a genetically inherited, probably, predisposition that you're not very good at hanging on to zinc, you know, or maybe your body's not very good at kicking out copper, you're going to have to go above that to get that to normal, okay, because that's the way you were born. So it's about giving these nutrients at high doses until the biochemistry becomes normalised, and that's when we see all these changes, breakthroughs in behaviour and functioning. So that's how it all came about. Anyway, sort of the history of it. But he's not widely known about. My criticism is that he hasn't done a load of great big RCT trials. He's done a couple of them. He did one on ADHD in 2004, did one with violent young offenders and things. But what he has amassed is the single biggest biochemical database anywhere on the planet, looking at mental health and looking at behavioural difficulties. So, you know, my view was very much, if this could work, if this could help people turn their lives around, you know, there's no downside to taking a bit of extra zinc, is there, right? Whereas taking some serious psychiatric meds for which there is no testing, there can be downsides. So
I was heading for an early grave. I mean, there's no doubt about it in my mind, because my blood pressure was spiking so much on all this stuff that I was stimulating to try and get my brain to work. There's no doubt I was probably dead within 5-10 years.
Well, and then the question there is, so for some people who don't know about this other work, absolutely medication's better than nothing, because otherwise you're self-medicating and you're being impulsive and anything can happen. And it shouldn't be an either-or decision. We're not going to say to people, come off your meds. We're going to bother doing this work and this testing. They're going to stay on their meds, and then it's up to them, under their doctor's supervision, to see if they can gradually titrate down off that med, and about 80% of cases, according to the Walsh Institute, are able to actually come off. Some have to stay on a very, very little low maintenance dose, but again, the side effects go, and if you've got another option, why would you not explore it? That's my view. They should be the last port of call, not the first.
Yeah, you're right. Okay, so I was 9.3 on my zinc, my plasma zinc. So on the scale of 1 to 10, how low is 9.3?
So it's not that low. That was the point I wanted to make earlier, actually. If you go to a GP, their scales of looking at things will be slightly different to Dr. Walsh's scales. Okay? So they will wait till it's really, really low before they say to you that there's a problem, and they won't be thinking about the behavioural implications. They'll be thinking about the physical. You'll be getting sick all the time, and your wounds won't be healing, and that sort of thing. So the scales that Walsh uses are a little different, but that 10 to whatever is sort of where that range should be, and yours was 9 something or other. The main thing that he looks at, however, is the ratio that you have between your copper level and your zinc. So your copper...
1.6 to 1, mine was.
Yeah, exactly. And if you've got that, then we know that you're going to have a hard time keeping dopamine where it is. Your dopamine is going to be flushing out all the time. So that's really what we look at. And can we normalise that level? But there are all sorts of other things we look at. If someone's got lots of free copper floating around their system as well, not good. And then pyrrole disorder is the other area that I know you didn't do the test, but
I haven't done it yet.
It's a urine test, and I think it's 70, 80 quid, something like that. I can't remember what it is exactly.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, it's not expensive. Or maybe it's even less. It might even be 60 quid or so. It's not horribly expensive.
I won't go do it in that case.
It is worth doing. It's a weird test.
So explain what this is.
Okay, so cryptopyrrole. So again, it's something genetically you inherit. Walsh estimates about 30% of the ADHD population, the cause for them is this pyrrole disorder.
Right.
And people with pyrrole, there's a whole set number of traits that go with it, okay? So the way that we assess is we look at behaviour traits and characteristics, and then we do the testing. So some of the traits are pyrrole: craving spicy or salty food. I don't know if any of these apply to you. Staying up very late at night, having no appetite for breakfast in the morning, often very pale skin for ethnicity, dark circles under the eyes. There are lots of things that go with it. And what it fundamentally means is that pyrroles are found in the urine, and basically they strip the sort of zinc and the B6 out of your system. So if there's a very high level, you're not going to be hanging on to your B6, which you need for nice healthy neuron functioning, and you're not going to be hanging on to your zinc, and we've talked about how important zinc is, and you get very high levels of oxidative stress and toxic buildup. So, the minute you've got toxins in the system, it's going to interfere with brain functioning, with how you feel, with health, with, frankly, long-term health, etc. It's got serious consequences. So, again, if you were to go to your GP and say, I'd like a cryptopyrrole urine test,
they'll go, what?
Well, first of all, no, they do know what it is. It used to be known as mauve disorder. They think King George had it, and that's why he was running around sort of being a little crazy. But typically, the medical professional will pick it up when your urine is actually turning purple, which is when the pyrrole's at such an extreme state that you'll be lying there in a kind of heap. Walsh is looking at a much lower scale of pyrrole than that, and he's looking at the scale that will impact your behaviour and your functioning. So if you find it, then what we do is we give very high doses of vitamin B6, and we do it in 2 forms. I think you're on P5P, aren't you? And then you're also, PHP, and then you're also on B6. And also high levels of antioxidants. So that can be all sorts of things. It can be C, it can be E, it can be, you're on quite a lot of things.
She's got me on everything.
Okay, so just to help you with that toxic loading, and I can't emphasise enough that that's important for overall health anyway, let alone functioning and behaviour. It's really important for your overall health to have that in balance. So that's just another area that we look, and I think he estimated between 70% have the zinc copper imbalance. That's one of the main drivers for ADHD symptoms. So it's interesting work, it's important work. It's not mainstream.
It's not mainstream.
Because it doesn't have all the RCT trials, but he has trained literally thousands of psychiatrists around the world, holistic psychiatrists that are saying, before we just prescribe, can we just look and see if there are any other options? So there are, he'll normally only train medics. I somehow slithered through the door.
I think I read in his book as well that the percentage of people diagnosed with ADHD who have a zinc deficiency is in the high 90%.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
So it would be safe to say pretty much that anyone who's been diagnosed with ADHD has got a very strong chance, very strong chance of being deficient in zinc.
Exactly.
And zinc is the main cofactor in the production of dopamine.
That's right.
So
that's right.
So go have a plasma zinc test because that's the start of the journey. Really,
but you're not going to get that in most of the UK. That's what I mean. I think we are virtually the only clinic, certainly the leading one, actually doing these tests and doing them the way they need to be done. And it's really sad that it's not much more mainstream, because it should be. I wish this was, part of the NHS and their approach to things.
Well, it would be cheaper for the NHS if it was. I mean, all they've got to do is take a blood test, identify that there is a high copper to zinc ratio and low zinc, and then say, go take zinc. I'm simplifying that massively, but essentially, rather than go and we're going to pay, what is it, £9 something for a prescription charge on the NHS for drugs that I pay 120 quid for privately. So there is a lot of money being wasted.
There's a lot of money being wasted, but for me, the cost is even bigger than that. And I look particularly at children, and these prescriptions are quadrupled over the last decade. So I said someone's getting very rich on the back of this. And I genuinely think we are going to look back at this era and think, did we really put a chemical cosh on an entire generation of developing brains? Did we really put a chemical which is in effect acts like a slow release cocaine? It's just not as fun. But did we actually put that into a developing brain? And it's the only medication that you're given for everybody else, to make it easier for the rest of the class and to make it easier for the teachers, to make it easier for the parents. Because if you speak to children that are on them, do you love being on it? Well, I love not getting into trouble, and I love being able to do better in my exams, so there's less pressure. But do I love the feeling of being on it? So I just think, listen, there was a time we thought frontal lobotomies and leeches were a marvellous idea. And I do think we'll look back, because at the moment it feels to me very unchecked. And I just think there are basic lifestyle things. I mean, that's this documentary that I've been doing at the moment. There are basic lifestyle things we should be doing first. Having a nice protein breakfast, not a sugar spike, going out, getting some exercise, getting a decent routine happening, even having a bath with Epsom salts, that's magnesium as well. There are things you can do first of all. And I think, for some families, if for example they've got a child as an adult, and I'd say they've got sort of more borderline symptoms, I think those lifestyle changes are enough. But there are other people, I've done genomic testing on people, and you can just see the pathways not happening, and it doesn't, the loveliest lifestyle in the world, and it's not going to be enough. So there are some people that you really do have to go over and above that. You've got to have that a good healthy foundation anyway, but then you're going to have to go above it, whether it's with the nutrients. But there are other things as well that I probably mentioned before. I don't know if they're relevant for you or not, but there are a lot of people with ADHD who are less of the hyperactive, impulsive sort and more of the, I just can't focus, I find it really, really difficult, I'm inattentive. And for them, it can be more to do with something called retained reflexes. So when we're born, our brains are about 20% developed. Okay, God knows we couldn't give birth if those brains were any more. Anyway, we'd be walking upright, they were any more developed. Anyway, so it's 20% developed. And that first year of life is the period of the most rapid brain growth. Okay, one of the ways in which the brain develops are these little baby reflex movements. So when you know it, you know it. If you look at a baby at a particular age, certain months, you'll see them doing these little repeated baby movements again and again. And you're thinking, what on earth are they doing?
Like grabbing their feet.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah. And I mean, there's one called the fencing reflex, where they turn their head this way and that arm and leg has to stick out and that has to do that. And they turn, that's between 4 and 6 months. And they turn it that way and it has to do that. And actually, each one of these reflexes, it's the same for all of us. We all go through it, and it's a very set sequence, and each reflex gets enough stimulation and then it goes, and then the next one comes up and it gets stimulated and then it goes. So set sequence, and by the end of it, by the time a child reaches their first birthday, those reflexes should have gone when you test for them. So doctors will test when a baby's born.
Yeah.
So there's the little infant moro reflex, that's the shock one.
Oh yeah.
That's the and then they hold their breath and then they cry and then they cling on.
Yeah.
It's really important evolutionarily because it's an early infant startle reflex. Any change to that newborn's environment, bright light, change of temperature, change of gravity, change in anything, loud noise, and ton of adrenaline will flood their system. They inhale, they hold their breath, load of oxygen, load of adrenaline, and then they alarm the mother and then cling on.
Right.
So you can see why.
Put
your newborn down when you're foraging over here, you want that reflex. And it's the reason a baby takes their first breath. If it's not there, the first thing a doctor does is stimulate the moro reflex. So that's an example. Now, by the time a baby gets to 1, they should have gone. But 9 times out of 10, where you've got someone who is struggling to focus, inattentive, perhaps someone struggling with high anxiety levels, someone with dyslexia, eyes can't track, hand-eye coordination, spatial issues. When we test, we find, oh my goodness, they've still got these little baby reflexes. These little things that shouldn't be there anymore. They've got immaturities in their nervous system. So if you've still got a moro reflex as an adult, and I cannot begin to tell you how many adults I treat with this, you will be in a constant state of anxiety. You will not be able to accept criticism, sounding familiar. You will be impulsive. You will be prone to big mood swings. It can result in things like phobias longer term. And it's very, very, very debilitating. So these are the children that can't stand changes to the plan. They need to know what's going to happen. You need to stick to it. And if you change it, it's, how on earth am I meant to cope with that? So the only way you get rid of these things, again, is you speak to the brain in the language it understands. So you do slow, controlled neurodevelopmental exercises. So these are little baby-like movements. So you basically say, okay, for whatever reason, I didn't get the stimulation I needed first time around. Maybe I didn't crawl. Maybe I never rolled over, you know. Maybe it was a really traumatic birth. And you go back to the first bit where it got stuck, and you do these reflexes until that reflex has, so these exercises have had enough stimulation, and then it goes. And then you work on the next one, and then it goes until the baby is fully cooked and functioning.
Wow.
And you get complete breakthroughs in behaviour. So
that's that sort of jumping letters on a page for dyslexia. Is that kind?
Your eyes jump. So the one I told you, that fencing one, is basically training eye tracking in the horizontal plane, because the baby's eyes are following the hand every time they move. If it gets stuck, it's as though there's a dividing line through the body like this. So you can test it. You can test a child's or adult's eyes, and you will see a physical jump at the midline point. Or, more often, because they can't do what I'm doing now, they'll turn their entire head instead.
Oh, really?
To track it, because the eyes are doing diddly squat and they can't. Anyway, so I
have to do it myself.
Well,
just to check.
Chris Evans' son, we worked with him. He went from 4 years below his reading age, and we did several, quite a lot, maybe 6 months work, 8 months work with him. He went to 2 years above his reading age. We never practiced reading once. We didn't practice reading. We just removed these neurological blocks that were making it a nightmare for him. Because if you go in and you're having extra tuition, extra support, all they're doing is saying, try hard, do it again, do it again, do it again. You can't do it again if you've got this neurological block. So it's another example, but we don't look at that. We just say, you can't concentrate, take a med. Instead of bothering to test.
And in the workplace and education, I guess, as well, we're now in that zone of thinking, which is nice. We're in that zone of thinking, saying we should understand, we should be sympathetic, and everyone is different. And I get this completely. I watched a program the other day on Tourette's. What was it called? I Swear.
Oh yes. And
I was angry because I immediately went online and said, okay, hold on, what about zinc and Tourette's? And there's a difference there because. I'm not going to try and explain it scientifically, but obviously the program was all about we need to be sympathetic, we need to understand. But actually there's a biochemical reason that is happening.
And it's a balancing act between these two things, because I genuinely see amazing abilities in non-neurotypical people. And I maybe it's my bias, I'm so completely drawn to positive, because I just think interesting brains, interesting way of thinking about things, seeing the big picture, intuition, creativity, all of those amazing things. And they are skills that are going to get more and more valuable as 100%. AI takes over, right? Because AI can do all the boring, logical, convergent thinking. We're going to need those big picture thinking. So I think companies are going to, I'm presenting to one later this week, are going to begin to wake up to the fact that it's not about how can we accommodate, how can we be kind. It's going to be how can I harness the power of this extraordinary different brain that I've got. So I think that's it. But at the same time, the work that we're doing is trying to remove the barriers that are there. So, we're not going to change the way that you're thinking. You're always going to think differently. I think you're saying you're neurotypical now. Your brain is always going to think differently, okay? But I'm saying what we've done is take off the bits that were getting in the way of everyday functioning, so you can be the best version of yourself you are. You don't want to change how you are. Don't want to alter that, but we do want to remove the barriers that are getting in the way.
No, you're absolutely right, because if I think back to before I was on meds, my brain has always been super creative. I know it's a cliche, but I've always been able to very easily think outside the box, almost what box? There isn't a box there. Let's just go all over the place. And I feel that's back now. That creative feeling is back because it's not being dampened
by the meds. That's right. Well, as I said, that was a comment a psychiatrist made to me recently when he said, I'm going to see what it feels like to take it. And he just said, I couldn't be creative anymore.
Exactly.
I wouldn't know where to start. I could sit like an automaton and complete a batch of work, but I couldn't actually come up with an idea. And that's terrible, because that is a really vital skill set for mankind in the future.
Absolutely is.
Mankind,
more desperately needed now than ever before, I think.
More desperately needed. So apart from just the fact that I think it's not great just to do that, it's going to be damaging us in the long run.
100%. So this idea of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Now, I've spoken to you about this briefly before. I'm more radical in my thinking now around this, because but I would go as far as to say, and we can talk about whether this ends up on the video or not, and that's fine. I would go as far as to say it doesn't exist. I was genetically born with a deficiency of certain nutrients and minerals in my system, and once I've now put those back in, my brain can function normally. There's no disorder, there's no attention deficit or hyperactivity. Right. That was just as a result of the deficiencies in certain minerals. And
you see, you're allowed to say that. If I say that, I get into big trouble.
Yes, I know.
But
hence the reason I wanted to do this interview.
But I see every day in the clinic, we change people's symptoms.
Yeah.
And if a diagnosis is purely based on symptoms, are we changing the diagnosis? Question mark. I don't know. I can't prove one way or another, but I can say a lot of people tell me what you're telling me.
Yeah, of course they do. It's absolutely blindingly obvious.
Yes, I know.
And I know you can't say it.
I know.
And it is the reason I wanted to do this interview, because I think an industry has, there's a couple of questions here. I think an industry has now grown up around this ADHD and neurodiversity, and there are a lot of people making a lot of money in this new industry around neurodiversity, where actually, if we come down to the core of a lot of it, it is nutrient mineral deficiencies in brains, and if you get those right, and by looking at people's individual biochemistry, then a lot of these symptoms disappear.
Yeah.
And so that we have, if we were on one side of an argument, there is a lot of people with a lot of vested interest in fighting against us. Because there's money to be made. Not only the NHS and the medical profession, but also those people that have now set up businesses that are around neurodiversity, and we must, give the message out there.
Enshrined. It's almost enshrined.
I would go further than that and say that there are people whose identity is now defined by the banner of ADHD, and they will champion the cause. And great, fantastic that we have championed that cause. But my view now is that we've got to ask that one really important question. Well, why am I like this?
That's all I'm interested in.
And that's the only
bit that interests me, So, I mean, I think you'll see from what I do that my motivation hasn't been to make a quick buck. We don't do diagnoses. We don't keep people on medication. Yeah. We try and work out why and give them what they need so they go away and never contact us again. It's a
your
truly
business model
appalling business model.
As a business model, it's absolutely dreadful, isn't it?
Coming from a place of Integrity
Of course
is
it
where
does.
it's going.
But I mean, as a business model, it is absolutely terrible because, you know, I come to you and say, oh my God, and you go, yeah, well, okay, let's do some blood tests, let's give you these supplements.
go on your way,
we get
you
you
know
up to
what to
right
do.
level, we get you on maintenance level, bye.
Bye, off you go. No, but I do think that's how it should be done.
Of
It's
course
what
it should.
I wish had existed when, you know, my 4 kids that are older. I just wish this had existed, and that's really how it came about. It was me just wanting better answers and refusing to accept things on this very superficial level that was there, you know?
I've just got so passionate about this, and obviously you said this earlier around a lot of your clients who do, because it is so life-changing, that I'm on this sort of mission now to say, I mean, the biggest stat for me is the fact that Walsh found that 90+% of people with ADHD have a zinc deficiency. If that doesn't compel people to want to go and get a £200 plasma zinc test to find out whether they are also one of those 95% of people, I don't know what else
I don't know what on earth will. And the thing is, just for context, he's running a non-for-profit organisation, William Walsh. He's, you know, he doesn't have an axe to grind in saying, oh, guess what I happen to have found. He's a, through and through born and bred biochemist, is what he is. He's just saying, it wasn't interesting. He's not getting rich on the back of it or doing anything else. He's just saying this is a very interesting observation. And actually, I would go so far as to say a lot of Walsh doctors and psychiatrists are actually quite scared of putting their head above the parapet, because that's a threat to serious revenue models for a lot of drug companies. And, you know, so I think there are people who are a bit nervous.
I lived my life with this RSD that I didn't even know about. And since being on these supplements that Lily's got me on, I 100% guarantee that it has disappeared.
Well, your theanine and your magnesium are helping with that GABA, with that calming everything down.
Yeah, that's been probably one of the
that is interesting.
My wife
isn't
would
it?
say that's been the biggest
That's
change.
so interesting, yeah. So, and again, I don't want to generalise and say that'll be the case for absolutely everyone, but in your case it is. And I also think, from what I understand from Lily, you respond very, very quickly to nutrients.
Incredible. Yeah,
and you could tell when you're, maybe you want to talk a bit about that time, you have to come off them to do the blood test, because we can't do blood tests.
Oh my God.
If you're taking supplements, you can't do blood tests.
So, I mean, just to be candid, I didn't do what I was supposed to do, and because I was getting very, very concerned about my blood pressure. I knew that it was my meds, and so my titration process of coming off the meds was about 4 days, because I just went, I'm done, and that is not advised, and certainly
never
not.
do it with sertraline, by the way. Never try that.
So and I went straight onto the zinc,
Yeah.
and obviously the zinc hadn't had anything like the amount of time to have an impact coming off the meds for 4 days, but I was prepared to do that because I just couldn't live my life like that anymore. And actually, for that whole period and running up to when I was going to do my blood test, I could feel almost improvements in the way that my brain was operating on a daily basis. I could just think things are getting better, and that was the motivation for me to stay the road, stay the journey, because I could feel this was going somewhere. And then Lily said to me, right, we're going to do the blood test. You need to come off all your supplements.
You thought,
and I kind of thought, okay, I wonder what this is going to be like. And I crashed like I have. I mean, it was a worse crash than a chemical crash off meds. It was just bang, and I hit the floor. And if anything, proved to me at that particular point, this stuff is working.
Yeah, it really is. It really does. It really does. And, and I was just thinking another simple way another symptom of having very low zinc is little flecks on your fingernails.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't know if you've got any.
Mine are filthy from gardening at the weekend.
No, but have you got any little white, those little white
on your
flecks?
fingernails?
It's just another way of telling of zinc.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, you've still got, look, that's one, this is zinc deficiency. Yeah.
Is it?
You can zoom in on that if you want to. I'm just saying it's another telltale sign.
Oh, well, Lily, come on.
She's working on it. She didn't say you're at the right level yet. Give the girl a chance.
Oh, no, exactly. I keep pushing her though, because she said, I've been good this time. But
she's brilliant.
I know she's brilliant. She is absolutely brilliant. But I'm sure she gets frustrated by me. Because she doesn't show it. She doesn't show it.
She said only lovely glowing things, I promise you.
Because she said, so you're on, this is before she'd done my supplement list and I was doing it myself. She said, so you're on 44. And I went, no, I've actually gone up a little bit, because I kind of thought, So that's so interesting. So that is still, that's a zinc deficiency.
Yeah, but it's old. Remember, that's your nail
Yeah,
growing down a little
exactly.
bit, so you could be past that stage.
I mean,
It's just another little indicator.
I'm only 4 months into this, so yeah, I mean, that
Yeah.
could be history, couldn't it?
Yeah, exactly. There are many indicators, but anyway. But I just think this stuff does need to be out there in the ether.
Oh my God, it does. Yeah, 100%. I think we've covered a hell of a lot.
I think we've covered a lot.